This morning about another manifesto. Today it's the Conservatives who are releasing their plans for what they do if they win the election. And we can speak now live to the Work and Pension Secretary, the Conservatives, Mel Stride. Good morning to you at Silverstone, which is where the Conservatives are going to launch their manifesto a little bit later this morning. And we're hearing that it will include a promise to cut another 2p off national insurance.
Well, we'll have to just wait another few hours and we'll find out for sure, because I can't tell you anything in advance other than making a very clear statement now that we are going to be cutting taxes. You'll need to wait a little bit before you get the final details there. Complete contrast to Labour, of course, who are going to be increasing taxes, not least with their retirement tax for pensioners, which is going to see millions of pensioners dragged into paying income tax for the first time.
We've been talking to Labour. We'll continue to talk to Labour about their plans. Let's talk to you about your plans. Tax cuts, you say. I just wonder, assuming, because that's what the briefings are telling us, that you are going to take another 2p off national insurance if you win the election, if that is what voters really want, because you've done it twice already in the last couple of months. The polls haven't shifted. You're still lagging way behind Labour. What makes you think that another cut will convince them, that will make a difference for you?
So the only poll that matters is going to be the general election day itself, and there's a way to go before we get there. But to answer your question about why it matters, what our cuts so far have done to national insurance, that's a 1/3 reduction. There's been a tax cut for 29 million working people, and for an average earner that means £900 less in tax that they're paying, and that's already benefiting people in their pay packets right now. So we recognise that we want to get taxes low, we want to support hard-working families, we want to give people financial security going forward. And you only get that when you've got a very clear plan for the economy, which we do, which allows us that headroom to make those tax cuts going forward. And I know that you will be interviewing Labour, I appreciate that, but I think there's going to be a big contrast this week between what we're setting out and a lack of plan from Labour, £38.5 billion black hole on the spending front that is going to lead to increased taxes under a Labour government.
And you're talking about tax cuts, but let's be absolutely clear, because of the freezing of the thresholds that you've enforced over the last few years, more people are paying more tax under the Conservatives than they were before. So although you're cutting some things, overall, a lot of people are paying a lot more. And on national insurance specifically, we've got this work by the Institute for Public Policy Research. You say that if you cut it by 2p, it'll be wealthier people, people in London and the South East, who see the greatest benefit. How is that fair?
Well, you're speculating as to what might be in the manifesto, but on this point about cutting national insurance, which we have cut by 1/3, and the threshold point that you make, if you take an average earner and you combine the effects of those two measures, you actually end up with the lowest level of tax for average earners in over half a century. So those who are average earners are paying less marginal tax, even taking into account thresholds, due to our tax cuts of national insurance, the lowest level in half a century. And that's because we are on the side of hard-working people. We want to support them financially, and we think that cutting their taxes really matters, unlike Labour, who are going to put them up.
And the Institute for Fiscal Studies says 4.5 million more people are being brought into paying higher rates of tax because of those thresholds that have stayed the same since 2021. I just wonder whether you're misreading the population, and that as people go about their lives this morning and they dodge the potholes on the road, or they hang on the phone for a doctor's appointment that doesn't come, or they try to find a dentist who isn't available, and they might think, you know what, times are really tough, I can't really afford it, but I'd rather pay a little bit more tax, or at least keep paying the same amount of tax and have better public services.
Well, look, on this tax point, and you mentioned the tax burden having increased, and it's not surprising that after having supported the economy through COVID, you'll remember the furlough scheme that we rolled out to save millions of jobs and keep people's livelihoods going, getting inflation down, helping people with billions of pounds of cost of living payments, helping them with their energy bills. That ran up a £400 billion bill. Now, that has got to be paid down. I think your viewers would expect us to do that. But what matters now is what happens going forward, and what's happening at this precise moment is we have started to get taxes down. I've outlined the huge tax cuts for working people, 29 million of them, and we will go still further today. I can't give you the full detail, I'm itching to, but they are exciting and very meaningful and important further tax cuts under this government, because we've got a clear plan for where we're taking the economy, unlike Labour, who are going to end up taxing millions of people, including many of our most elderly residents.
There are some details that I can give you, though. You say that you're going to pay for any tax cuts by cutting the welfare bill. We're hearing this morning, while we're on air, that the unemployment rate has risen today to its highest level for 2.5 years. That is going to push the welfare bill up, isn't it? It's going to make these supposed tax cuts even more difficult.
OK, so there's been a very slight increase, I think 0.1% in the unemployment rate. But let's just focus on that for a sec. That is still at a historically relatively low level. It's around half the level of unemployment that we had under the last Labour government, where, for example, under the last Labour government, youth unemployment went up by over 40%. Under this government, it's come down by around 40 or over 40%. So our record on employment is extremely strong. On welfare more generally, yes, we believe that the welfare spending needs to be brought under control. We have a very clear plan for doing that, and we know that we can make savings in the welfare budget. These have all been dismissed by the Labour Party in the last 24 hours, which tells you something very clear, which is that under the Labour Party, they will let welfare spending spiral completely out of control. Under the last Labour government, we had well over 1 million people on long-term benefits for almost a decade. And that is what you get with a Labour government. With this government, we will control welfare spending and we will cut people's taxes.
We will see that manifesto a bit later. Mel Stride at Silverstone. Never thought I'd say that. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Breakfast.
Thank you.